We appreciate you taking time to talk with us.
Thanks for doing this.
You're welcome. And first, where are you right now, Steve? And is this where you've been since the pandemic started?
Yeah, I live in Central Florida. I'm at home. We have a hay farm, and the soul do everything. So I always have tons of stuff to do.
What kind of farm is it?
Hay farm. I cut hay and bale it and sell it, store it, deliver it. And most of my time is spent with the machines and trying to keep everything running.
Wow.
Just a bunch of old equipment.
How cool. So this is some insight into you. So when you're not touring with the band, you're doing this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And when I am touring, when I come back, it's like there's so many things have grown, overgrown that I have to fix.
That's so cool. I mean, I can't even, and you can make a little dough. It sounds like you do that as like, it's a business too.
It has to be a business, but it's not, I don't make any money from it.
Right. I get you. But you break even. And how big is the farm?
It's 56 acres.
Wow.
Stuff grows fast here in Florida. And there's a short window to where it's dry enough to cut it. So when it's time to go, it's really time to go. It's like every time I'm baling hay and something goes wrong, I'm underneath the baler in the middle of the field getting eaten by fire ants. Rather than saying, oh, wait, I'll just take it into the shop where it's nice and paved and I can use a creeper and get underneath it and adjust it at my laser. No, it's like, I got to get this up before the rain gets here.
Right. Yeah, there's some demand, you're saying, about doing that people don't maybe realize. That's great. Well, I didn't know any of that about you, and that changes a lot of things, and that really does help understand. Because I've been reading a couple recent interviews that you've done since the pandemic, and they were very insightful, not only into Whoosh, the new record, obviously written and recorded before this mess began, but into some of this lifestyle stuff. So thinking about the album, and share a little bit of the backstory of the writing of the material and your role in that.
Well, I'm not really the band historian, but it usually takes a year or so. We do a couple weeks of writing in a small city in Germany where nobody in the band lives, and there's nothing to do there except the sound stage. It's like a gigantic rehearsal room, and it's good for playing with drums because the drums don't bounce off the walls like they would in the small practice room. And we could sit and jam and try things, and that's what we did. It's like a group isolation thing. And the band's always felt that way about writing. It's just try to be in a place where there's no distractions. And I bring in ideas, and I plan for a very high rejection rate because I don't want to influence. I don't want to sell them on anything. I just say the band will let me know if they think something fits Deep Purple. And I try not to write anything for the band because I've always been surprised at what the band picks out. It's like, oh, that's cool, and something different than really obvious. This sounds like, a caricature of Deep Purple kind of thing. So yeah, my job is basically just bring in lots of ideas, and when somebody else brings in an idea, when we start on it, then my job is to think of parts that would another section that would go with that or not. Piecing it together is the hard part of writing. Come up with the inspirations and things that are memorable is always fun, but there's some work involved where you got to try different things and try and convey it. I encourage the band to try my ideas when I feel strongly about it, and then make a judgment. Because a lot of times I don't think that'll work. I said, tell you what, let's just try it. And a lot of times they're like, well, yeah, okay, I can see that. That's the way it is in life, isn't it?
I love it. It's a great thing. No, I mean, it's an incredible insight into your role. And to provide a little context, Steve is the only American in this British band, this legendary British band. And Steve has gone on to be their longest running guitar player, too, in what is arguably a very guitar-driven sounding band. And reteaming with legendary producer Bob Ezrin to do this one. But I just wanted to back up a second and replace that. You say you guys go to, is it the same city in Germany every time? Have you done this for all your records with them? And when you're doing that, do you when you're how much time are you there recording or doing the work, experimenting on putting the songs together, and then in your downtime are you also spending time together?
Okay, well, it's been the last 3 times that we've gone there, and it is just a little city. Like for me, the only place I could walk to get anything to eat is this butcher shop, and they'll fry me up a hamburger or two, and I take it back to my room and eat, and it's really just real basic life. And the people in Germany are super nice, always. So it's very easy to get along with. But we haven't always done it. We've done, like one time we were in Spain, and one time we were in Portugal. Ian Gillan lives in Portugal at least most of the time of the year. And then before then we were rehearsing in London. But then, it becomes a lot more distractions. And it's cool when we rehearse in London because I get to meet lots of rock stars and, people that I never just because I'm with the band that I get to, oh, there's Jimmy Page, or there's Robert Plant, or there was George Harrison. All this because of being around there. But we get less done because there's more. Everybody was originally from the London area. And so by going to this place in Germany, it keeps the focus on it. But the guys are very British. We start the day with tea, then there's a tea break, then there's another tea break, then there's a lunch break with tea. Then there's a later tea break, and then we wrap it up.
Is that Earl Grey? Is there a particular tea that they like?
Yeah, it's pretty much English breakfast tea, which is, English people are very close to Indian people from India because they were part of the British Empire, and they cross-pollinate lots of things. So the Indian blends of black tea are preferred.
Wow. And what's the city in Germany, by the way? We still haven't said the name of it after all this talking.
It's near Dusseldorf. I can't remember the name of the city.
That's okay. So it's near Dusseldorf. And
I fly into Dusseldorf and drive for about an hour.
I get you. Well, that's cool. That's a cool insight. And then the Nashville part, I guess that's where you worked with producer Bob Ezrin?
Yes. And we do like one of those rehearsal places where there's, lots of bands playing in different rooms. And that's pretty weird because, a lot of them are getting ready for tours. So you could hear some famous people rehearsing and stuff because, it was a fancy place.
What months was that taking place? I'm presuming it was 2019. And who were some of the other cool cats that you'd see in the hallway that were also working at this facility?
Session people and, guys kind of setting up for tours. And I can't remember all the names. Some of them are. Bob knew everybody. He introduced me to some of them.
I get you. What months was this happening in 2019? This was in 2019?
Yeah, I think it was around close to wintertime, like fall wintertime.
And this producer,
I'm not the historian. I don't.
No, I know you're not. I know. I'm not going too deep into the question, Steve. It's only last year, my brother. If I was asking you about like something from the in rock era, then I'd feel like I needed the band historian. But I'm only working back a year with you, my brother. But the legendary producer Bob Ezrin, to a lot of people listening, they may not know because, as you know, this is all things considered. So we're talking to a large tent, brother Steve. So we always like to include everyone with the references. He's done some huge records, both with Purple, Kiss, Alice Cooper. He did Pink Floyd's The Wall. He even did one of the Kansas records you played on. When you're working with this guy, does he ever share stories about some of those other huge acts or albums he's done? And tell a little bit about any fun memories of working with this guy in the studio who's really touched so many of the artists that have touched people.
Yeah, Bob, I was doing the last Kansas album I did with the band when I was part of the group, called In the Spirit of Things, and Bob was producing that. And he just gotten a sampling program put in his Macintosh, and it was one of the first Macintosh, with the all-in-one computer with the screen, the cathode ray tube screen built in the top. And so he had stepped out, and he said, "Why don't you get started on the guitar sound with the engineer?" And we came up with a great guitar sound. And Bob comes in, and I see him fiddling with the Macintosh, and he has talked into it, and then turns the Macintosh around so the speaker's facing the talkback microphone where it would go in my headphones. And he had modified the voice so it says, "Morse, haven't you ever heard of high-end?" Coming from his... Like, he had to go through... Instead of just telling me that, he went through the trouble of programming it into his computer. And I don't know if he did text to speech or what, but he had the computer tell me that he didn't think there was enough high-end on the tone that we got. And by the way, the tone we gotten was fantastic. But anyway, he'll tell me stories about, doing the wall or that. I remember I was saying, "Lad, give me another shot on this solo. I don't like the last one." When I was doing my solo overdubs, and he'd say, "Well, David Gilmour did the solo for Fly in one take through this little teeny amp on a boat on a river in England." I said, "Well, that's really nice, but right now I need another take." So let's go.
Trying to compare you to David Gilmour to make you feel guilty that you should just do it in one thing.
Always.
That's some funny stuff. Yeah, I was reading the way he talks to you and that he calls you by your last name, Morse. I remember the one thing you said in one of your interviews, because I can remember it. It was so funny. He said something like, "Morse, save that for your solo album. I need something more melodic for this."
Yeah. And I say, "Well, I really like you, Bob, that must be the part of you that you didn't bring to the studio today, though." No.
That's funny. That's
we
good.
do a lot of the ribbing. He's very close to an American in his attitude.
Where's he from?
He's Canadian, technically.
Right. Okay.
He's lived in the U.S. for so long and worked in the U.S. for so long. He just is an honorary American.
Right, and worked with so many major cats and so many different, some of the real big Alice Cooper and Kiss records too, and of course with Purple and this new one. One of the tunes that really stuck out to me, and we're blessed because we're talking to Steve. He's at his home studio there on his 56-acre farm in Florida. It sounds so nice. "The Power of the Moon" is one that really stuck out on the new Whoosh album from Deep Purple. So moody and spooky. That's really nice, slower tempo. And what's Ian Gillan singing about there, Steve? Not that I know you're not the historian and you're not Ian, but you've messed around with this thing for a little bit. What's that song all about? And what a tasty riff from you, by the way, during Don Airey's keyboard solo. I gotta thank you for.
Oh, you made that this. That's the real eerie sort of haunted keyboard and guitar line that we keep going.
It's so well done. Same with Man Alive. I mean, you have a couple of these that just have these great, like that one has the spooky, slower tempo, psychedelic, I might even say.
Those are kind of keyboard voices. They have those clusters of the notes right next to each other. I got carried away jamming.
No, I love it. And I love that you're there with your guitar too. And some of the lyrics on that's just so powerful when he's talking in that song about the earth being cleansed. Some great spoken word from him when people take a listen to that. That's one of the songs they've released as a single from the record. Who's wearing the astronaut uniform in the videos for this thing?
I actually don't know. That was my contribution to this was, I like the dissolving portraits. The image of everything is just being slowly eroded,
right,
visually, and it fits in with the title of the album. Whoosh! Before you know it, it's over. You get this one little tiny speck of time in the infinite universe to make your market do something good. So take advantage of it.
That's really the theme, huh?
I think so. We don't have any overtly political leanings, and thank God that the band doesn't want to be a political entity, because I think when people look to entertainment, they don't want to be sort of told what to think or lectured or whatever, or you've got to this, or you got to that. I think people just want music to be an escape. I love for it to stay that way.
That's a great point. And I mean, this stuff has that. But at the same time, I think there's a difference between politics and when you do touch on socially important issues, and also in a world where maybe it feels rudderless without any kind of moral leadership, or when, there was an era where there were people like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and there were folks who you could look to that would make you feel good when they talked. So in some ways, I know what you're saying, but I think that, when a band has a spirit of something that, there is something to be said for role models, I guess.
Definitely. I think everybody, and regardless of what their platform is, needs to lead by example.
Right.
And exactly, everybody, that's one of my big pet peeves, is that everybody with a microphone, access to any kind of print, has a responsibility to realize that they're shaping our culture.
Mm.
And to think not once, not twice, but 3 times about what you say or do, because, like I said, we're literally shaping our future in a small way. Even when we contact somebody, if you see a stranger, drop something, you pick it up to them and say, "Here you are, sir," or "Here you are, ma'am." That doesn't take any effort at all, but it might change the way that they look at strangers in the future. It's like, wow, that was awesome, and they, the person didn't even know me, and they gave me the words of respect and help me.
That's right.
So everything we do matters. I'm a big believer in that.
No, I love hearing that. And that's great follow-up to what you had said about for not being the band historian. I got to give you a lot of credit for hitting the nail on the head with that Man Alive, because I actually printed the lyrics and was reading them. And what you summed it up so well, Ian talks in there about how thousands of years can go by, and it's just like the same amount as time as taking a quick breath. The way you said it better than me, but just the way that time, we're just this little tiny speck in this bigger thing, and very powerful. And the album, we'll come back to one or two of the lyrics on this in a moment, but the album is done. 2020 begins. Share with us the plans that you had in place to promote it, and also, if you can recall it in sort of story format, or just the timeline as you recall it in your mind, how exactly everything came unraveled due to the pandemic. Any memories you have of first learning there was something very wrong about to happen?
Well, yeah. 2020 was all booked. There was an album coming out, and our biggest tour ever. So we had one festival to do, a Monsters of Rock kind of thing to do in Mexico. We went and played it, but that pandemic thing was starting to be a thing.
Is this February?
And I think it was February.
Okay.
And I remember my wife saying, by the way, if you see any antibacterial stuff there, get some. I said, where? Why you can't get it from the store? I said, no, every place is out. And so I went to a grocery store in Mexico and got some baby wipes or something. That's all they had left. They were sold out of the usual, the Lysol kind of things.
Right.
And they didn't even have liquid soap. Well, there was one of regular liquid soap, but they didn't have the antibacterial stuff. So I had some liquid soap, two rolls of toilet paper, and some baby wipes that I came out. That was the best I could do. But at the gig, there was people like from other bands coughing and sneezing in the cafeteria where everybody's eating backstage, and I thought, wow, this is a lot of people are sick, and with this germ going around, it doesn't seem like a good idea to eat here. So I didn't eat that day, and came back, flew home, and then I had to go into 14 days of isolation because we have a handicapped daughter that's at greater risk. She can't breathe normally. And 14 days living in my camper.
Wow. On your property, 14 days, because you have a daughter with a disability that requires that she would be vulnerable, you're saying. Heaven forbid that you were carrying.
Can you imagine being the one that made your daughter ill?
How old is your daughter?
She's 28, but she's, she's different. And she would.
I get you, brother. I get you totally loud and clear. My mom had MS, was quadriplegic, and I'm grateful that she left in 2013 because I wouldn't want to even imagine trying to deal with this now with her. So I get it. So you come back, and luckily for you, you got some space there, huh? So you can go out in the camper. At least you're not, as you know, a lot of people can't even isolate. They're in such a... So then after you get out of your isolation, take it from there.
Well, during that, I was going to the studio, and basically you just blocked off areas that only I could go.
Ah.
And, I didn't go in the house ever, but I could get in my workshop and studio because we have doors that isolated.
Sure.
And so I led a fairly normal life. My wife would drop off things literally at the doorstep, paper plates. I went out once to get something to eat, but I sprayed the money with alcohol spray. I still had some alcohol sprays because I used it in the shop. Isopropyl alcohol works great for degreasing things.
Sure.
So I had that, but I remember I had this gallon of isopropyl alcohol for the studio to clean the recording heads of the tape machine. Well, I went to get it, and the bottom had corroded out of this entire gallon, and it just slowly leaked out and it evaporates instantly. So I was so dismayed. Right. Then I went and got some gas treatment called HEAT, HEET, and IsoHeat, and it's 99% isopropyl alcohol, and then 1% like oil or some kind of toxic stuff. But 99% alcohol, I thought was a pretty good deal. So I used that for a disinfectant and just keep putting in spray bottles. And when I went somewhere, I'd spray everything and did the mask thing. My friend that I grew up with is a surgeon, and he told me, you need to wear a mask. It was before this was a thing. And I said, why? The virus particles are too small. They'll go right through it. He said, even a T-shirt will stop 70% of the water droplets. Not the virus, but the water droplets which contain the virus. And the more you can reduce the amount that you take in, the less chance you have of getting an infection, which was different. I always thought if you got one cell, you pretty much had it. But anyway.
I know what you mean. It's cumulative. You need a whole lot of it. I totally get it. I'm following you very closely. We talk about it all the time on the news. Continue.
Anyway, yeah. So I found out that our tour was canceled. We had a Flying Colors trip with another band that I'm in, sort of a prog rock band, and we were going to do the Rock and Roll Cruise. And that was the biggest thing of all, was that these people were heavily getting infection rates on the cruises.
Right.
But we were booked for a week on that, and we couldn't cancel. We had to wait to see if they were going to cancel. Right up to the last minute, it seemed like it was on.
Wow, one of these rock cruise things he's talking about, where fans go on a boat and they see some bands and they get a little bit closer to them over several days. Wow, so you found out only right when they canned it, huh?
Yeah, I was sweating that a little bit because that would have meant another 14 days in isolation for me.
Wow.
In fact, all our family was supposed to be on the cruise.
Even worse, right?
Yeah, and then Shawnee, of course, wouldn't be able to go. Our daughter with the special needs, and then we were already talking about who's going to stay behind to take care of her. And anyway, we found out that was canceled. Then the entire year of Deep Purple was canceled. And I found out, I just tell everybody now, I said, ever since I stopped making money, I've never been busier. Because everybody suddenly had time to email these long emails. And then my friends that were musicians were like, hey, can you play on this? Hey, would you listen to this? Hey, can you critique this? Hey, I need a solo on this. And pretty soon I've got more stuff to do in the studio than I've ever had. And sitting down to do emails is not just something you do in an hour anymore. It's like hours. So, yeah, that's what's changed, is that I spend a lot more time sitting. And, I'm a general outdoor person. I like to be doing things during the day. So I keep putting it off till night to deal with email, and it takes longer and longer.
Right. That's powerful. I mean, it's everybody has. We're doing a whole series that you're part of. It's called Off the Road. We've been talking to all kinds of cats, from some of your cats that you've worked with, like John McLaughlin and Al Di Meola, Joe Satriani, Randy Brecker, just all these different people, Soul Asylum, 10,000 Maniacs. They all have interesting stories just like yours, and they're also unique and personal. And as you're talking, the other thing that we didn't mention, which, Steve teaches, Steve's opinion has been valuable to people for a long time, as he was just mentioning. It continues to be, but Steve's also somebody who can share his knowledge and help other people learn skills and craft. And in this, we lost legendary music teacher. I guess made me think of Ellis Marsalis, father of the Marsalis musicians, John Prine, Manu Dibango, numerous others. Have you been touched by the losses in this personally? Has anyone that you know lost, or have any of the people I mentioned, did that touch you?
Yeah, my guitar roadie for many years and friend and member of our tribe since the Dregs days, Scooch, he committed suicide during this lockdown. He was a very people person, and that's what all he cared about, was just being around people, helping them make things happen. I remember he distributed a lot of the equipment that we had left over from our tour that he was in charge of, and he would let other musicians use it just to help them out. And was just a very people-oriented person, and he became more depressed just from being so isolated. That's the one that touched me the most. Is yeah, okay, we locked down, and that's great, but does it matter when people debate, is the cure worse than the disease? And for him, it was.
Right. Well, that's kind of like you were talking. Some people are more vulnerable than others. And adding to what you were saying, we just had John Anderson on, from the singer from Yes. He's 75. He has asthma, and he has not seen his children. They live in LA and he lives in Central California because he's just too nervous about what, like you were saying about, quarantining for your own relative, so
yeah.
It's really, you point out a real hard truth to this, which is that it can be difficult in both ways. Being isolated, it brings its own devastation, is what you're saying. And that's touching. What was his name again?
Scoots Linden. And we were supposed to have a memorial for him, but his son he said, I want to wait till we can have everybody play. Scoots knew lots of people, and lots of
musicians,
lots of great musicians from the Macon, Georgia. The Allman Brothers area is where the Lindens grew up. There was going to be lots of people playing at his memorial, but he decided to postpone it until we could, safely have a concert. And
right.
The collective wisdom of when we can do that is still out. The doctors can't even agree on whether are we going to have an immunity? Is it just T-cell activity that's going to provide safety? How much sheltering do we do? When we shelter people too much, do they lose the T-cell production that fights the virus? There's all kinds of controversy.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was kind of leads into that next. I was curious. So because everybody seemed to go in stages depending on when their stuff was booked. Some people's stuff got rebooked rather quickly and then had to be postponed again into the fall and then again into 2021. Other bands sort of took a more long view and said, you know what, we're bumping everything for a full year. We're not coming back till the end of 2021, if that. Kind of just putting it out there because of what you just said, really. I'm just adding to what you said, the uncertainty of really not knowing. And so when it comes to you guys doing a little homework before talking to you, I guess I saw just 2 tour dates listed at your site for way next year. I guess it's May, some point in the middle of 2021. Greece and Turkey, ironically, 2 countries feuding again at the moment. Are there adding to what you said about that uncertainty of what's going to happen, what are the tentative plans for when you'll do what would have been this big year of touring?
Yeah, they rubber stamped and put 2020, they rebooked it in 2021. With very few changes, and the promoters were fine to do that because they just changed the last number of all the contracts.
Same dates. You're saying it'll be the same dates,
and we're hopeful. By the way, you talk about playing in 2 places that are feuding. One time we played in Lebanon and in Israel, and the gig in Lebanon had been bombed by a rocket in Israel, and the bridge was out going across this gorge because it was been part of the retaliatory bombing. And we were riding with this Lebanese guy to the gig, and he kept getting phone calls. And I don't speak any Arabic, but he was excellent bilingual. And So I said, "Who's that, man? Who keeps calling?" He said, "My mother." I said, "Don't tell me. She's worried about you being with all these foreigners in your car, right?" He said, "Yeah." He's kind of sheepishly nodded and said, "Yes." I said, "Well, my mom would think the same thing if I said, 'Hey, I'm in Lebanon. We just passed this bombed out bridge, and the guy that's driving us doesn't believe in the same religion as us, you know." So I said, it's that way everywhere. People just, here we are in the same vehicle. We're getting along fine, and everyone would. But it's hard to get past some of the fears that people have.
Oh, that's a great point, man. That's such a, not long after my mom died, I realized what you just said. I thought, because my mom, I'm adopted, my mom is Jewish. And they never really raised me with religion, but for months after she passed back in 2013, I used to think a very similar thought. I used to think, even a person who thought they hated Jews the most of anybody in the world, if they stood next to her bed as she was about to pass away, they would never be able to have all that hate in them. It wouldn't be possible. So I know what you mean. Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There's if the anonymity of the internet and big media takes away that personal experience. If we look people in the eye and share something with them,
That's right.
Anything, we drop those I guess fears much quicker.
Yeah, no, that's how I used to say. I'd say, you see someone suffering in pain, you can't have that kind of hate. It'll cleanse you in a lot of ways, to use a word from your esteemed vocalist, which is used on your new record. And one song on the record, and continuing this kind of talk, but going back to Whoosh, and again, it's Steve Morse, a great guitar player from Deep Purple, and there's a very powerful one. And again, I know you don't write the lyrics, young man. You've established that, but you're playing on Drop the Weapon. It's some of the haunting lyrics in this one. No sound of silence, just streets of violence. We're in overload, wrong side of the road. Oh, San Francisco, where the hell did you go? That is so powerful when he says something like that. I mean, it's like, you can just figure this stuff out. So as I said, I know you're not really the lyricist for that, but you are the American in Deep Purple. You were a young kid during the original civil rights era. You obviously know there's a lot more to people than, like you said, the aesthetics on the outside, and perhaps you're old enough to have memories from back then, but and I know you're particularly sensitive to the plight of Native Americans. But on the note of the current Black Lives Matter police reform crisis we've got, can you share any of your thoughts on this, ways you've been touched by the things that you're seeing or feeling, or the sense of division that seems to have taken hold in parts of this country?
Well, as a general rule, in election year, almost everything is done on the media is somehow tied into the election and which side they're on. So I think in general, the way that I've taught my son is you treat everybody with respect and be professional at all times. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. And I don't have exposure to people that don't feel that way. So I don't know what it's like for people. I mean, I hear about that everybody's horrible and racist, and I'm sorry. I met one person 35 years ago who truly was, and I couldn't understand it. But they were flawed in many other ways. We generally love people. We go around the world, and the audience is the same. They look different, but they react to music the same. They have exactly the same souls as we do. We all share that. And traveling around the world, literally around the world, and even seeing, like in communist China, seeing people slowly, hesitantly moving closer to the stage as we, over the course of our tour, we got the guards to put their weapons down and let the people come up. And just seeing them, at first out of fear, afraid to have any reaction, but once they knew it was okay, they turned into regular old people. It's amazing. That's the best part of my job, is that I get to communicate with people in the one universal language. And as far as the problems we have in the U.S., after seeing all the suffering and problems around the world, and when you come home and it looks like, we've got it pretty good here. And I don't see the problem. I mean, there is a problem in perception, for sure. And there is a problem when you have, when somebody's detained, I remember that feeling of, even as a little kid, just like you don't have a choice. You have to deal with this. You have to be, whether you're detained by, going to kindergarten. To me as a kid, that was like a jail sentence. I want to be outside playing. I don't want to be in this place. But you have to deal with it. So there's a bunch of things that we don't like about the way that we construct our societies. And every law is backed by somebody with good intent who started it. But things get twisted and too complicated, and unintended consequences of bureaucracies set about injustices that happen. And I see it as just the result of massive bureaucracy rather than systematic, planned out anything against people, or especially any kind of people. Everybody I know in the music business, when you're playing with a musician, you don't think about where they're from or what color or what religion. They just think about what they're playing, what chord are they trying to go to, what note, what's the feel like, what's the rhythm. It's all in terms of that. So I wish, I'm sort of in the Rodney King camp. Can't we all just get along? Let's look at how bad it is everywhere else, and maybe put our problems in perspective.
That's great. The Rodney King camp. That's yeah. I'm sure he'd be giving you a big high five from heaven for dropping his name like that, in that way. Who cannot remember when he said that phrase? For sure. That gives you chills. It's great what you said about how music is really this international phenomenon that brings people together. And I love the way that you reference, Deep Purple is obviously a band that have a huge international kind of phenomenon when it comes to its fan base, its history, and being able to communicate with people. It has been your natural method first to communicate, being the guitar. You've got one there. You're in your home, which is kind of cool in a way, because it enables you to have a guitar for our interview. We've had so many interesting things, Steve. I know, because you love music. We had Randy Brecker. You know who Randy Brecker is, right? From the Brecker Brothers. He played some tasty trumpet solos for us. We had 10,000 Maniacs frontwoman Mary Ramsey. She played Over the Rainbow on viola. It was just like, you just had chills. Al Di Meola, who you played with, Strawberry Fields Forever, he did it solo for us on the guitar. Yeah, can you stand it? I mean, Joe Satriani, he did an entire song.
What a great intro that was. Great song.
You're the man. So
I didn't actually plan anything, but I could tell you some of the bits on the album, like on Nothing at All. We have a sort of a classical interplay between Don on the keyboards and myself, and I'm playing what would be like a solo violin sort of line. It's kind of a light tune that gets heavy in the chorus. classic ones, one of my favorites is the Highway Star. It's all high tempo stuff, and in the middle, the guitar solo that I still play. Like sort of a mindless, just really repetitive thing, but it's all pure energy, and that really propels the tune. And,
oh, that's a great. I love that riff. That was I love that, and I love the power of the moon and the man. How about the Man Alive thing? That thing in the very beginning of that tune in Man Alive.
We have a lot of that a lot of the stuff is ensemble things that I guess don't lend themselves too much to Drop the Weapon. That's just the basic rhythm riff.
Yeah. From that
Roger
one.
And I are, Yeah, Roger and I are playing that together, and there's little harmonics that I. A lot of playing rhythm guitar involves the little squeaks and squawks that add up to giving the rhythmic energy of a part.
Right. Oh, that's and you have such a when you're you're running that through, that's like you always, I remember, had tons of effects and stuff. What's your rig like there that you're using at home?
I just got a microphone. I'm going through straight into my angle amp.
And your amp
and
there.
and it's going through the board right now because I was recording, so. Just playing blues.
That's so cool. No, I love hearing you play the blues. And do you have a pedal that's do you do anything on a clean setting or everything on distorted settings when you're sitting around there?
Well, my amp's about 15 feet away, so I can't.
I get it. You can't go mess with it like that. No, it's super cool though. I love hearing the taste. I love those bluesy.
I clean up a little bit with my guitar. Just go to a single coil pickup and turn down the. Playing some harmonics.
It's fantastic. I love it. When I think of your style, the thing that's such a trip for many older fans is you were, for so many folks, you were a new guy at a point in our lives, because if you grew up with Purple, you grew up with either Richie Blackmore or Tommy having been in there, and then you come into the band and you establish yourself. You're already this heavily established cat who's like legendary for your style, which is so different, than Richie's in so many ways. And you go on to be by far the longest running guitarist in the band, which is really unusual how it all worked out, especially for a guitar band. And I was reading on Wikipedia, and I don't know if it's true, one never knows, but it says Richie Blackmore, who preceded Steve in Deep Purple, according to Wikipedia, has stated, quote, Steve Morse is an incredible player. A lot of people try to get some wisecrack out of me, but when you're talking about guitar players along Morse's caliber, they're brilliant. And I don't know if I ever asked you before, but have you ever met Richie, and did you ever see him play live, either in Purple or Rainbow or anything?
Oh, yeah, I saw him play live back to the Dregs. Opened up a show that Rainbow was playing at. I thought they sounded fantastic.
What year was that?
Oh, man, it had to be in the 70s.
Was Ronnie Dio singing?
I think it was it Graham Bonnet?
Yeah, okay, so it was later. Yeah, Graham Bonnet would have made sense, about 79.
I got a ride to the hotel from the band's manager, who turned out to be Bruce Payne, the
current manager
of Purple. Yeah, Bruce just retired, but and what a perfect time. He literally picked the perfect time to retire. Right before the COVID.
So he takes you. Tell that story. He took you to the gig. What was the story there?
Oh, we were going. I was wanting to go to the hotel and take a shower before the gig, and he had a limo, and so I just said, "Is there anybody?" Usually a runner or somebody going to get groceries or supplies, you could talk them into giving you a ride.
Right.
And so I just said, "Is there a runner that I could get a ride to the hotel?" And they said, "We can't find anybody, but." The Rainbow's manager is getting ready to leave to go to the hotel. I said, "Well, can I catch a ride with you?" He said, "Sure, hop in." Wow. So that was cool.
And so you end up getting it, and then Bruce becomes the manager for the band. Yeah, because when I met you one time in 2001, I remember you were doing a tour, and I got to stand right on stage. Your guitar tech was handing us beers and stuff. He was such a sweet guy. You had such a nice bunch of people working for you. And Bruce, he's from Connecticut too, right, as I recall, Bruce.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's right.
I remember he was,
he still lives.
Yeah, he's very local feeling cat. So that's great. So, and at that time you were opening, so it was a single shot, back to the question. So it was a single shot gig. It wasn't a tour. You were just doing one show.
Yeah, one show. And I never got to meet them, but Roger was playing too.
Right, yeah, in that era of the band. Exactly. That's a great, and Cozy Powell, was he on drums or maybe not at that point?
I didn't get everybody's name, but
you saw Richie.
Yeah, and it was great. And I didn't meet him, but in fact, I still have yet to meet him. Wow. But I think there's a mutual respect that I'm really glad of. And you talk about being set up for a shot. That the fans that didn't like the fact that he wasn't there anymore,
right,
basically would tee up the shot for him every time at every interview. Which is, this new guy sucks, right? And he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. And I was really touched by that, because it takes a lot of restraint when somebody's, just pushing you and pushing you to say something bad about somebody and it would have been expected the way that they were
goading him, right? Goading him on. I get it.
Goading. I think goading. That's a perfect word.
Yeah. Yep. And your style was so different than his style. So despite your chops, yeah, I could see how people would. But it's great. It's great, that mutual. So I'm glad that quote seems to reflect the realities that there are. And so you never, still back to that part of that. So did you ever see Purple? Did you see him with Tommy Bolin?
No, they did very, very little touring in the U.S.
Right.
In fact, I'd never seen the band play live when I joined the band. That's why I was so glad we were going to have a trial period, because I'd seen bands living off the name And I said, I don't want to do that, man. I'd rather just play little clubs for the rest of my life than be part of something that just looks like it should have stopped.
All right.
So, like I said, we got together and it was awesome. I played something, John Lord played it back like a jazz keyboard player. And I said, whoa. I gave him something more. This is over a beat, Roger and Pacey going. And man, we just kept taking it out. And that's when I met the guys, was 24 hours before our first gig.
And that was where, in 94?
We planned it in 93, but I didn't actually play with them and meet all of them until 94. Because it took months to arrange the tour.
And you only met him 24 hours before the first gig?
Yeah, I met Roger because he lived in the States. And we took a picture of Roger and I standing next to each other, and they took a picture of the three of them in London. And they photoshopped it together for the 4 shows that we did. That was a good picture, too.
I love it. What a great story. And then that first show, do you remember where it was? Somewhere in the U.S.?
Yeah, Mexico City.
Mexico City.
Yeah. Sold out like little Coliseum thing, and no pressure. But we spent most of our rehearsal jamming and having a good time and improving the camaraderie. But we went over a few things, a few cues, but it was a 2.5 hour show. So there was a lot for me to remember. And I'd learned stuff from Richie's live, tapes of them playing with Richie and also with Joe Satriani. So I was combining the influences of both to try to make it comfortable for the guys so that they could just, pretend like this is just one more gig.
Right. Yeah, because you had two audiences really to try to deal with, the audience and the crowd, but also the band.
Yeah, and it was cool though. One of the things I did screw up, I went to a different section without cueing in a little jam session in Speed King, and I was trying to sort of urge the band into the next part. And Gillen says, "All right, Steve, that was a great solo," and the beat's just simmering underneath it. And he said, "That was really cool. What do you say if we do a little jam like this?" And he goes, da, 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 like a Land of a Thousand Dances kind of little motif. And I said, "Oh yeah, that's real similar to the thing I should have played." To cue he and I harmonizing together. So it was cool. The one time he had to sort of straighten me out, he did it, involving the audience and without any negative vibe or anything. There was no glare or anything. It was just like, hey, let's do this. It was a great way to walk into the band.
Oh, it's huge. What a cool, and you've had such an indoctrination though into other sort of, I would imagine, difficult gigs. I guess I point to, when you did it was 83, so this would be like the second, or at least the second go around for Paco de Lucia, for John McLaughlin, for Al Di Meola, and I guess at the first part of that second round, Al wasn't going to be there, and so right. You were going to be taking his role in the trio. Then he shows up, you end up opening for that tour. It was how did that whole thing get shaped? Was it less intense? Because I can just imagine being with your hero, John. It must have been so intense.
Oh, no, it was insane because I was supposed to fill in for Al, and Al just had a lot of the stuff that he arranged with these guys was stylized around him and his particular super strong points. So that was a tough gig. What it ended up being was Al he was able to get through. I don't know what the problem was, but he was able to get through the visas or whatever, the passport problem. And we did the Australian tour and the American tour. But instead of kicking me off and saying, "Oh, well, we got Al back," they said, "Why don't you open the show, and at the end we'll all four play."
Right.
And so when I was trading off solos with those guys at the end, it really upped me, working on my technique and stuff. And then during my solo thing at the opening the show, I was able to play classical guitar with a lot of original pieces that I've written. So I got to do both, the heavy duty right hand picking thing, and then the classical guitar solo performance.
Was it just though so intimidating? Because I listened to the Dregs, and when you listen to the Dixie Dregs, it'd be really hard not to draw the connection to Mahavishnu Orchestra, and that's what got me into them. I was into Mahavishnu in high school. Someone said you got to check out the Dixie Dregs and what Steve Morse was doing. He was a huge fan of John. So to work with John on a personal level, as we go to wrap it up, is that one of the more intense accomplishments when you look at it? I mean, is he the guy in terms of your personal favorite guitar player?
Yeah, John changed. I'd gone to a music school that had classical guitar and jazz guitar, and I fit in. I felt like somewhere in the middle, not really in either camp. But my principal instrument was classical guitar, and I was stuck in the jazz program because I played electric guitar. And when I heard Mahavishnu during my freshman year, they came to the school. It blew me away because the jazz people liked him too. I said, "All right, this is my bridge." Because when I did stuff like that I normally do, the jazz people hated it, and they thought it was a waste of time. But the Mahavishnu gave a credibility to combining the rock and jazz influences, and suddenly it made my life a whole lot easier. And of course, I loved his arrangements and the sound. What a great band! Yeah, and having Jerry playing violin and later being
in the Dregs.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Really
saw it at the Paradise, my brother. It was jaw dropping to see that one. And I also I remember the Berkeley Performance Center show in 1990. It was the Steve Morse Band opening for the John McLaughlin Trio. Remember that?
Oh, wow, yeah. That was pretty intense. When he was doing the acoustic thing?
Yeah. Tree Locker 2 and Kai Eckhart on the in the band, I guess it was. Is that guy Treelock on the percussion, and you were opening, I guess, or maybe he opened for you. I think I don't even remember who played first, but is he your all-time favorite guitar player?
I think he's had the most influence.
That's so cool, so cool. He was just on from Monaco.
I love seeing him, and we get to see him when we do play in France, in southern France.
Are you friends with him?
Yes.
Okay, so you stay in touch.
Over to his house, and he was very gracious to me during the tour that we did together with, the acoustic tour.
The one that I was just mentioning.
Yeah, the one you're talking about. And so was Paco. They were like my two big brothers,
And Al, did you get to know Al?
Yeah, Al was like just a regular old American,
Yeah.
He was more easy to relate to, and there was like not a lot of mystery there. He just, yeah, here's how I do that, and here's what you should do. And it's just real straight up.
New Jersey. It's the New Jersey.
Yeah, there's nothing. I felt like there was nothing hiding anywhere. He was just, okay, this is a situation. You're going to play with us here. Let's practice this, and then you do that. I'll do that. Okay.
Yeah.
No problem.
No, he's very easy to. I come from the Philly area, so talking to him as you were describing, I couldn't agree more. He's just so. Although John's such a sweetie, he's like an old hippie, and I've had him on the show many times by phone, and it's always both of them are real easy actually to talk to. But I know what you mean. Al's like that dude next door kind of feeling, and that's neat because you've had a lot of. And was Zappa ever a guy who? Because I know you played. There's that great. You got to have you do that Peaches version in L.A. at the Roxy with Dweezil sharing lead. Was his pop an inspiration or someone you loved?
Definitely. I especially love his instrumental stuff. I never could grasp onto the whole lyric idea of lyrics in general. I was more of a music composer, and I love the things that he would come up with. And I didn't get to meet him. I ended up playing in a couple spots on a long album that Dweezil was doing, and ended up recording at Dweezil's place, which was the Zappa studio, family studio. Unfortunately, it was right after Frank had died, So
I,
his family was very gracious.
I bet. Dweezil's such a cool dude. Dweezil's a solid cat all around, and
And he
really.
keeps getting better as a player. He's just when we did Montreux 2 times ago, or no, last time we played Montreux, he came and did Peaches with us,
Nice.
and walks in and nails the soprano sax part. And that's like his trademark. Is that if he could just do that in sleep.
I got to get that on the YouTube. So it's Montreux, Peaches, Deep Purple, 2018, 2019, something like that, 2017.
Yeah, I don't know.
But that's about when it happened, you're saying?
Yeah.
All right, I'm Googling that one. Well, I led into the Zappa to your final question, and that is, because you kind of intimated it real early in the interview, talking about how when you guys would rehearse occasionally, you said you chose this place in Germany outside of Dusseldorf because it just gets you away from everything, and you said that a distraction could be because all those cats are from England, so if you're playing when you rehearse in England, all kinds of rock stars show up, and it can be distracting. So your final question would be, favorite hero encounter stories or opportunities over your career to interact with some people that we haven't talked about. And it doesn't have to be someone, by the way, that is in your thing. It could be Tony Bennett or Frank Sinatra. It could be anybody who doesn't have to be somebody that you necessarily wanted to play with, but maybe because of your unique opportunity in that job, they were at an after show or you got to go to their house or something where you thought to yourself, I cannot believe that so-and-so is here with us, or maybe that surprised you as a fan. I remember that Prime Minister of England, Tony Blair. I remember Tony Iommi telling me one time that Tony Blair came up to him at an after show and wanted to talk to him about the early Sabbath, and Iommi just thought that was the craziest thing. The Prime Minister of the country wanting to hear about the classic Paranoid tracks. When you think of your own incredible life, any stories that just make you smile that are fun to recall?
Yes, several. Well, first of all, because of Roger, we were doing rehearsals in England in late '90s. He says, "Fancy go to see Liv and George?" I said, "All right, but we got to get back to rehearsal, or it gets up to eat." He says, "We'll just stop by for tea." Okay. So we pull up to this gigantic place, and that's just the guardhouse. It turns out Liv and George was George Harrison and his wife, Olivia. So we hung out for a long time and literally had tea. That's the afternoon tea with them. And that was awesome, for me. Naturally, a Beatles fan, like all musicians. But he was real cool in it. He had a great relationship with his son.
Donnie.
And I thought it was really neat that he felt as strongly about his son as I did about mine, and that was a cool encounter. And then back when we played on Jay Leno's show, just seeing the professionalism that he would come into the dressing room, and even though we were just a musical guest, he would ask some pertinent questions and kind of do a pre-interview,
right,
so that he would be able to make a better introduction.
Yep.
And that level of professionalism that I always saw from him, and that he learned from Johnny Carson, how to let the guests do the talking and to not steer them too much, but save them when they were getting tongue-tied or whatever, and let himself be the straight man for all the jokes. And he never got political. He just always he would make political jokes, but they were always pretty even-handed and funny and witty. So that's one of my big heroes. But just being able to be next to one of the gargantuan people, and during that show, meeting Tommy Chong and Arnold Schwarzenegger backstage, just hanging out. That was just for a tourist kind of, in a tourist kind of way. That was really neat. But there's been lots of great moments. I took my young son to Italy. We were doing a thing with Pavarotti, and Deep Purple was a guest. Eric Clapton was also there, and we had a day of rehearsal. So I brought my son with me. He was a little kid and cute and everything. Introduced him to Eric Clapton because we were kind of like eating in the same area. And the next day we come back for the gig day, and he stoops down to my little son and says, well, "Hello, Kevin. How are you doing?" And I was blown away. I have trouble remembering names, but that he would do that, and that he would just instinctively know how important it is, to connect with young people in a positive way. And then the later I put two and two together. Oh yes, that's right. He lost his son.
That's right.
About the same age, but that was an awesome moment to just, I don't know, big respect.
Oh, that's a huge moment. That's a great one to leave it on. Unless you got another one that you're queuing up for me. That's just such a touching.
That's a good way. Good way to leave it on.
Yes, it is. It's a beautiful, touching note right there, and so many great things. I humbly hope that you've been somewhat kept busy or entertained or enjoyed doing this with me today.
Definitely, it's a great interview, and thank you for involving music in it.
I've really enjoyed it. It's the great Steve Morse of Deep Purple, guitar player, longer than any other guitarist in the band, and just a huge whoosh, their new record, and obviously, fingers crossed, sending you lots of positive energy that, as we pointed out, who knows what's coming next, but let's hope that at some point it can get resolved and you can go back to being on the road and doing what you love. But love to be able to stay in touch with you or something, because you're really fun to talk to, and I have truly enjoyed it. You spread some great energy and some great stories too, Steve.
Well, same here. Thank you, and to everyone out there. Hope I didn't step in it too bad. And if I did, I didn't mean to. I mean, love to everybody. Thank you for supporting music, and let's make the world better with each encounter. Hello, it's Steve Morse from Deep Purple. Don't even think of changing the station. We're tuned to my friend Dave Lawrence. It's member-supported Hawaii Public Radio. We have never needed a nonprofit news source like we do now. Please dig deep and support it, and thanks for joining our family.
You are the man, Brother Steve. Well, appreciate it. Giving you a big hug and a high five from thousands of miles away.
Thank you, David. Great job.
But and be safe there on the farm. Don't step in anything. My God, that thing's big. 60. How many? 57? 67? What was it?
56 acres.
56. There you go. All right. Have a great day, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Aloha.